Today, for the very first time, believe it or not, I am going to be listening to the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds.
You didn't think, no, that I could sit around and let you go. You didn't think that I could sit back and let you go. You didn't think that I could sit around.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another album review / reaction here on the channel. This is something that I'm very excited to do. My cousin Cody came over, and he came over so that he could go with me to a record store yesterday after I was done with my chemotherapy at the hospital in Omaha. And so we did all of that, went to the record store, and we filmed the video yesterday kind of going over and showing all of the things that we bought. So you can look for that here on the channel. I'm sure that'll be out at some point, though I don't know when in relation to this video because I have so many things recorded that I have to edit, but hey, that's good. We're getting content at least recorded. So I knew you were coming over, and so I was like, what are we going to listen to, right? And we have talked about several things that we wanted to do over the last year or so. Generally with Cody, if you're new to the channel, normally we do reactions to all sorts of different things here, and with you in the past, I have stuck to more sort of like, I would feel like older sort of like classic albums.
Yeah, we've done a few classic albums. We've done
some 80s stuff.
Some 80s stuff that I just like. So
we've done some things that I've shown you that I just never released the videos, like the Grace Potter stuff or any of that stuff. But at least we did them, and you know who the she is now.
Yep.
And so you know, we've recorded a few different things, but in the back of my mind, I always was thinking like, there's one thing we got to do. We got to do some Beatles. Mm-hmm. And so we were talking about doing the Beatles, and one of us, I can't remember if it was me or you, brought up the idea of doing Pet Sounds at the same time, or like you know, on the same day, because I know the history of it, that like the Beatles album or the Beach Boys album Pet Sounds really influenced the Beatles and how they wanted to go in the studio and try to like record something that sounded really good or whatever.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting juxtaposition, I think.
Yeah. Or at least it was very influential to them at the time. And they were going back and forth, I think, several albums before that even too, where they were like, oh, the Beach Boys released this crazy album. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I do know several songs off of this already that I've just heard through, like, you know, over the years. If you are new to the channel or you don't know, because you've been watching my Metallica videos and stuff like that. Growing up, we listened to the oldies radio station all the time, and back in the 90s, oldies referred to music from the 60s and the 70s and the 50s even too, because there was a lot of like that's how I learned who like Tommy James and the Shondells was, and Sam Cooke and Elvis and stuff like that. And so I do know a lot of the singles, like a lot of the big songs from those bands that were important bands of those decades. Yeah. And the Beach Boys are definitely one of those bands. They were more towards the 70s, but
oh no, Beach Boys
were 60s.
Very quintessentially 60s, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they started off as doing fun surfing music.
Right.
And then towards the end of the 60s, they kind of had a similar career path as the Beatles, or it's like kind of pop, you know, simple pop songs when they started, and then by the end they were just kind of writing like genius albums.
Yeah, and more complex stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to listen to this. When I was in college and we would talk about like influential albums and stuff, you know, we did have a class called music listening where we would listen to music and just talk about the mixes. But usually what our teacher did for that was we would bring in stuff we liked, and then we would just listen to a song from an album that we liked, and then we would discuss why we thought it sounded good, or the teacher would like, our professor would be like, okay, I hear this and this and this, like this is what I would have done differently.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
How'd they do this? Right, I know, it's exactly what I loved. It was definitely my favorite class. I loved it more than anything that I did in college. And that's actually the class that Chris Schoenberg teaches at his college.
Oh, nice.
So he teaches that class. That's one of the classes that he teaches, which is really awesome that he gets to do that. And so we never listened to this album, but I do remember talking about it a lot at the time.
Okay.
And I also think I may have seen a documentary at some point on YouTube or maybe Netflix or something that was about like
a classic album series, maybe.
No, it wasn't that, because that would have been about this album specifically.
Yeah.
But it was about music. I think it was just in general music, like in general, like I think it was just a small part of a bigger documentary that was talking about music production in general.
Sure.
And so they were mentioning the Pet Sounds and then Sgt. Pepper's.
Okay.
And so the reason we bring all this stuff up, and the reason I'm wearing my Beatles shirt, which I bought at Walmart when they were on sale for $5, is to let you guys know that along with Pet Sounds, we're going to be doing Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band as well. We're going to record that after we're done with this one. So, yeah, I don't know. Do we need? I mean, I like I said, I'm familiar with a lot of the Beach Boys' early stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with a lot of their singles.
Okay.
And so I definitely know some of the songs from this album. In looking at the track listing, I know Wouldn't It Be Nice? I know Sloop John B very well. Mm-hmm. I know God Only Knows.
Oh, this track listing's out of order on here.
Oh, really?
Okay, there we go.
So I know Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Yeah. I don't think you probably know any of the ones on side 2.
Yeah, I know
except for God Only Knows.
Yeah, I just know Sloop John B and God Only Knows.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what's on Sloop. Oh,
Right,
okay,
yeah.
Sloop John B and side 1.
And side 1.
Yeah, and I know those because when I was little, one of the very first CDs we ever bought, one of the very first CDs we bought as a family, because I didn't have any money when I was little, I guess, I asked my mom to buy it, was a Greatest Hits, Beach Boys Greatest Hits.
Oh.
And I bought it because at the time, and for a long time when I was younger, my very first ever favorite song was Chain Gang by Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that song. And then my second favorite song was Barbara Ann by the Beach Boys. I absolutely adored the low voice, the Barbara Ann.
Yeah, I could see a kid
I
liking that.
loved that. And so I loved that song. And so we bought the Beach Boys Greatest Hits. And then later on, I bought actually another Greatest Hits of theirs that had like some rarities on it. And that was how I heard the song Loop De Loop Flip Flop Flying in an Airplane, which is also one of my favorite Beach Boys songs. Flying in an airplane. I love it. Right. And so that actually had some like demos and stuff on it of other things, which at the time when I was little, like I didn't know anything about this stuff. I probably didn't even understand the concept of a demo or anything like that. But that was a cool thing that I still have to this day. It was called Endless Summer. It's Beach Boys Endless Summer. I can't believe I remember that.
I think I have that. That's a famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a compilation
I have
thing.
that.
But I think that there were some
They put it
songs
out in the 70s.
released on that were only on that, I believe.
Oh, there could have been. It was a big release. Yeah, I have that on vinyl, I think.
Yeah, I think if I'm thinking correctly. Anyway, so that's sort of so I do know all of their like big hits from that stuff, which is how I know these. And then also just listening to the radio at the time, like I said, they used to play all these songs on the radio. They don't really anymore because now oldies means 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s because we're already 20 years into the 2000s.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, which is fun for me because that's the music we grew up on that was when we were, younger. But that wasn't the music I was listening to at the time.
Right.
We were just listening to oldies. So I'm really excited to listen to this. I have heard people reference this album a lot in terms of the production and the like technique that they were using to record stuff. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about that stuff if I notice anything that's weird or that I think we want to talk about. The only other thing I want to bring up is that we're going to do this a little bit differently for this video. We're going to try, we'll see what happens. I might change my mind as we're doing this, but we're going to try to do it the way that I would normally do reactions by myself. Since Cody's here actually with me and we don't have to deal with any delay issues or anything, I'm going to try to just hit play at the beginning of the album and listen all the way through without stopping it. We'll see what ends up happening. If I hear something that's so crazy I do want to talk about it, we'll pause the album and talk about it. And I will make sure that when we restart the album from whichever beginning of whatever song it is, because I won't pause in the middle of a song. I'll wait till whatever song's over. I'll count down because I will try as hard as I can to use the audio from this album in this video. However, I am fairly certain that copyrights will be such that I won't be able to use the audio. So we'll see what happens. If like Cody brought up the idea before we started recording this, if there's some other version of this album that that YouTube would maybe let me use, I may upload the video with a different like remastered version or something of this album, so you wouldn't necessarily be hearing exactly what we're hearing, but I think for the purposes of the video it would make sense.
Yes.
It depends if like I probably won't upload the mono version. Right. Because we're going to probably be talking about the stereo spectrum a lot. Yeah. So like, I don't know. Or I don't even know if there is a mono version.
Well, what version are we listening to?
So we found, this is the, this is the I believe, just the original
Okay, so
files.
probably original CD release or something.
Yeah, I think this is probably just from the original CD release.
Yeah, and I don't know what they've done for remasters or anything on this.
Is the name of the song Caroline No?
Caroline No, yeah. And they put that's on here too first. Sloop John B and Caroline No. Those must have been the singles from the album.
Which is interesting because I've never even heard of Caroline No.
I think that must be the B side to Sloop John B.
Interesting.
Because you think Wouldn't It Be Nice would have been the lead single.
Well, that definitely is the biggest song from this album,
Yeah.
I would say. But maybe that's like a after the album came out thing. So, yeah, I believe what we're going to be listening to is just the original version of the album, and we'll just we don't need, is there anything else you feel I should know about this or?
I don't know. I'm just trying to think. What do you know anything about Brian Wilson?
I know he's like brilliant. I know he does all of his harmonies himself.
Yeah.
I
I
know.
don't know about that, but
Or he like
maybe
writes
he
the
does.
harmonies.
He's the main songwriter.
Maybe that's what it was. I think I maybe watched a documentary on Brian Wilson once.
Oh, could have been. He's kind of
Because
considered.
he went like a kind of nuts for a while.
yeah,
didn't
he did.
or something like that.
He's had a lot of mental health issues his whole life.
Reclusive and stuff.
Starting back in the 60s, and he's still around now, and he's gone on tour in recent years and done like the Pet Sounds tour where he just kind of plays this whole album.
Okay.
I had a chance to see him once in Council Bluffs, and I didn't do it for some reason.
Oh,
but
that's
I
too
kind of
bad.
wish I would have, because apparently it's a decent show, or
Well,
at least
yeah.
it was.
I mean, the idea of getting to see the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Does he tour with anybody else from the band?
I don't think so. I don't
remember-
think they're touring as the Beach Boys anymore.
I remember for a while, because they were on, this is going to probably sound stupid, but they were on Full House. And Jesse
Uncle
joined
Jesse,
the band.
yeah.
But he was actually a member of the band for a while
I
and
think
toured with them, right?
he's in the video for, oh gosh, their big 80s hit or whatever it was. Aruba, Jamaica. Kokomo.
Kokomo.
Yeah, so he's in the video for that. I don't know if he actually plays on that song, but I think he was like touring with them.
But yeah, he actually was in the
he's
Beach Boys.
He's an official Beach Boy.
That's
John
so
Stamos.
badass. John Stamos. Yeah, that is so awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
That is so cool. But yes, I do know. I have heard that yes, Brian Wilson is like a genius, like a musical genius, and I think was there even a movie made about them?
Like a biopic?
Yeah.
I don't know. Not that I know of.
No, I can't remember. I'm sure I've seen something about his life, and whether it was just a small 10-minute YouTube video or something about his life and just his songwriting and stuff. And so, yeah.
So this is the version that I have. It's got a little different cover art because it was the one that came with Carl and the Passions. It's like a double album. They put out Carl and the Passions in the 70s, and then they're like, hey, maybe people will buy it if we put Pet Sounds on the back. So I've never even listened to this, although I think it's a decent album.
That's cool, though.
Yeah. And apparently this was like a better sounding vinyl release of it.
Oh, cool.
Although my copy's a little scratched up. And you found a copy of this last year, I think.
I did. We were going to look for it earlier, but I have just so many vinyl things sitting around. We decided it wasn't worth the time. But I found a package of 3 Beach Boys albums all together.
It was it looked like a compilation or something. But
Yeah.
then I started looking at the track list, and it's like one whole album is just Pet Sounds in order.
Yeah, and then it was their 2 other albums as well.
Yeah.
So it was, and I think it was just on one single vinyl.
There's no way.
No, maybe it wasn't. So it was a 4-disc set. Pet Sounds was
3 or
on 2,
4.
and the other 2.
Foresight. I don't know.
I don't remember. I'm sorry. We probably shouldn't have even brought it up because we didn't find it, but it doesn't matter. But it wasn't. It was such an interesting thing. You were looking it up on Discogs, and you were like,
Yeah,
I should just buy this.
Yeah,
because it's all
like a
3
really
of their
cheap
albums.
way to get Pet Sounds, and
Yeah.
then you get a couple other good albums with it. It was like $12 or something.
Yeah, it was very cheap but we didn't.
Yeah.
To be honest, we never put it in and listened to it, so maybe it was like really cheap files.
That's right. Yeah.
Or like a cheap like pressing of the album or
But
whatever.
I'm sure if you find like an original pressing, it's probably $40-$50, something like that.
Really?
These
Okay.
days, if
Okay.
it's in decent
So
shape.
something to keep an eye out for.
But they've repressed it a million times, and it's
and it is considered the Beach Boys like quintessential album, right?
yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And notably, Good Vibrations is not on this album, but Good Vibrations is probably like, if that was on this album, it would be the best song on here. And I don't know if I think they released it before this or right after, but it was just a single. Like it never
Interesting.
made it on an album.
Interesting, because Good Vibrations is definitely one of their biggest songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of their best songs.
And
too.
it's very like, it fits with the sound of this album.
Oh, now I'm even more excited to hear it because that's probably my favorite Beach Boys song now.
I think me
maybe
too.
I don't know. That's kind of like a cliched thing to like. Oh, I like good vibrations. But it is so interesting to think about the fact that they started as such like a surf rock band because that's absolutely what their identity was. And now when I look at these track listing of these songs, like none of them say surfing in the title, which is like
Right,
half their songs. So it is interesting.
It's something of a concept album where it's kind of telling a story. I think it's maybe like a breakup album.
And
I'm
what
not
does
sure.
pet sounds mean?
I don't know. There are animal sounds on some of the tracks.
Okay, that's interesting. That's really interesting. And on your cover, they're like at a petting zoo.
Yeah, it's the same picture, I think, as the cover. Yeah, so I don't know exactly where the title came from.
That's actually a really stupid album cover. If you look at it,
It is
you know,
so.
like to think about like how classic, you know, all these crazy album covers are, and the Molly Hatchet ones, and just how cool all those covers
or
are.
even Sgt. Pepper's. I mean, like,
and Abbey Road, you know,
Yeah.
and then this.
and this one's even a little classier looking, but the original cover
just this picture?
It's got this like green bar across the top. It looks like if you didn't know what it was, you'd like pass it up in a thrift store. You know?
Yeah. So boo to that, I guess.
I've never thought of the Beach Boys. Their first album has a really cool cover. I have it on my wall actually, where they're sitting on a truck in front of an ocean. But
I think I've seen that.
yeah, it's kind of a famous picture. But their album covers have never been great.
You know, that's fun. I've always wanted to have a conversation of like which band has the worst album covers because I would absolutely nominate Depeche Mode. I think their album covers are horrific. But
yeah,
you know, especially for how big bands are. Like if you have a
Right,
small
yeah.
band that released one album, who cares?
You expect it.
But like Beach Boys, Depeche Mode,
I know.
Metallica.
Yeah.
You know, like though you expect those bands to have like a good album cover,
Right.
and when it's not. It's like, and it's consistently not across the whole catalog. You know, it's like, dang.
That'd be a fun.
We should do
video
that
to
at some
is,
point.
like bad album covers.
Yeah, we should do that at some point, and we each come with like maybe 3 or 4
Yeah.
suggestions. Yeah,
I like that.
that'd be really fun. Let us know in the comments if that sounds like something you would enjoy watching, and we can do that.
We could monetize it.
Oh, also, I feel like I have to mention, I would not normally wear a jacket like this, but I bought it yesterday at the Goodwill.
Yeah.
And I'm a little chilly, and it's like this thick thing that's got this like, I don't know if you can tell, this like wool.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really nice. And I thought it looked kind of nice too. So I was like, okay, I'll wear it. Have my Beatles shirt underneath. And so, all right.
Oh, the only thing I'll ask you,
okay.
you have to kind of put aside your reservations of like thinking that something is overrated.
Oh, okay.
And I know that's tough for you sometimes.
Right. We had that issue when we listened to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't believe this is like the greatest thing of all time.
I know, and now we've called this the greatest album of all time.
Yeah.
And then we're going to listen to Sgt. Pepper's, the greatest band of all time. But it's like...
But I already
you can't-
don't think any of those things is true.
I know. But
So
you
it's
can't
like-
focus on that. You just have to just try to appreciate
And this is
it.
what year?
66?
Really? I thought this was from the 70s.
No.
No? Oh,
The
interesting.
Beatles were done by the 70s.
Interesting. Okay, so my thinking was off by 5 or 6 years then.
Yeah. So...
Because I think of the 70s as definitely being a much more like high fidelity decade than the 60s. So the fact that these were in the 60s, maybe that will make me appreciate it more.
May of 66.
Okay.
And I want to say Sgt. Pepper's came out in 67.
Okay.
Or maybe late 66.
Very interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into this. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll count down here because I imagine you'll probably have to start your own copy of this with me. I will include in the description a link to listen along with us on Spotify. And I'm sure it's very easy for you to find this album on whatever music service you listen to if you don't use Spotify. Or go grab your CD copy or your vinyl copy, though it might be a little tougher to line that up with us.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start. Wouldn't it be nice in 3, 2, 1.
There we go.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long? And wouldn't it be nice to live together in the kind of
So we are listening to the stereo version.
Yep.
No, it's gonna make it that much better.
Those low brass.
Yeah.
Very cool. This is obviously one of the songs I'm very familiar with,
Yep.
but I'm going to focus on it like I probably have never done before.
Maybe you've never used headphones.
No. All the vocal harmonies. I know that's what the Beach Boys are known for, vocal harmonies.
Happy times together we've been spending. I wish that every kiss was
Never ending.
wouldn't it be?
I won't be able to sing any of the other ones, so just let me indulge me on this one. Now, I will say everything does sound pretty far away.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it does sound far away.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, they're doing that on purpose because there's a lot of reverb on that. Ding, 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 the harp.
Yeah. Is that a harp? You know? Whatever it is.
I think so. See, in my head, I'm just like, oh yeah, it was just a harp patch on a keyboard.
Oh.
But it probably
No,
wasn't in
probably not.
1966.
No, I doubt. There's probably no synthesizer on this.
And I think that's one of the things that lends the impressiveness to it, you know,
Yeah.
like, because we're hearing strings, close mic'd individual strings,
Yeah.
because you can hear the da-da-da-da-da, like you hear the tremolo in the string. Timpani drums, like big tom drums. Is every song gonna fade out? Probably, huh? I know this one does.
Probably. Good chance.
Okay, so my thoughts on that are, just in hearing that, I'm a little surprised that would... Now, I don't know, I haven't heard the rest of the album, but that to me wasn't very impressive.
Okay.
The thing that was impressive about it was the effort that they put into it in terms of like bringing all these different things into the studio.
Yeah.
So if that's where the impressive part comes in...
Yeah, I think that's where people
Okay.
see it.
Because there was like a moment in the song where there was like a little glockenspiel type thing, and it was only in there for like 5 seconds. And maybe at the time that would have been considered like an outrageous expense or whatever. So like the fact that they went all out.
I think it was kind of an outrageous idea,
Sure.
not necessarily expense. Like, I don't know how many recording tracks they had for this, but
So here we have harpsichord off to the right. And I have a new cable now that actually I can tell you what's to the right and to the left, and it's actually accurate now.
stage left.
And we're balancing that off with some percussion on the other side. That's some brass in the middle. That's like
Oh, yeah.
a oboe or something. Very Renaissance-y, which I know
Yeah.
you're a fan of, right?
Yeah, Baroque pop.
Yeah.
Where you throw in a harpsichord.
Blur has some songs like that are...
Yeah.
And Brian sang lead on every song.
I think so. Yeah. I think this is Brian.
I mean, it sounds like him.
Yeah.
And obviously, nowadays, when you hear stuff like these harmonies, you're like, oh, it's so easy to do that with autotune and Melodyne.
Right.
But obviously, at the time,
Yeah, they were very talented.
yes.
Oh, I know this one fades out. I think that I remember there being a funny sound effect as this one's fading out.
Okay.
See if I.
See, this is cool because, he's singing a bit more.
Yeah.
Sing a bit more, and then when you record yourself, your low register voice, you have to get closer to the microphone in order to be heard. You have to really, like, Yeah, that's an oboe. Ooh, strings off to the left.
That's what it was. Clown horn.
Is that what that is?
I don't know.
It could be some kind of a flute thing or something, but...
Oh, it sounded like he's.
Okay, so that to me really wasn't even like a song. That was like an interlude.
Yeah.
That's what all these are. They're all under 3 minutes.
Right.
That I could make it alone now, but that's not me.
Okay, there we got multiple guitars on the left and on the right. Sorry for my phone making noise. I'll turn it on. Do not disturb. World. That's like quintessential Beach Boys.
Yeah.
And they're from California, obviously.
Yes. Yes.
They had like 40 songs about California.
I know. Yeah.
See, now to me, this sounds like his vocal styling from the older songs. Like he's singing the way he sang on those other songs.
Yeah.
But the music is very different.
Yes.
It's more sparse. The guitar on the right is really cool. It's like a tremolo, like Western guitar,
Yeah.
which is cool. But there's also a guitar very far in the background with lots of reverb on it on the far left as well. But it's like Dwayne Eddy guitar,
Yeah, it is.
you know?
Down, down,
Yes,
down.
yes. That's a baritone guitar,
Oh.
which that's probably also the same guitar they used on the right as well, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I don't know, in the 66, how much could
Like how many
they
tracks
do
they have.
overdubbing? Like, yeah, how many tracks could they have? There must have been a lot, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not just 4 tracks, probably. I don't know.
Like, you can hear Brian Wilson doing multiple vocal takes there, so like he's doubling his vocal.
Yeah.
So like he can double himself. So like so what I'm guessing they did is that he did his lead vocals, and then when they would go in to do the harmony vocals, he was there, and then the rest of the guys, and they did them all together
Yeah, probably.
because they're all in one track. They're not spread wide. But in the last track, they were spread wide.
Okay.
But maybe they did 2 takes of that. You know what I mean? And then you
Yeah.
spread them wide.
So I packed up and split for the city.
There's definitely a sense of space in this that's very.
I soon found out
It's interesting.
Yeah. And it's not like cheesy like some of the early 60s
No,
stereo
no.
stuff.
This is
was.
more like what something from the 80s would have sounded like.
Yeah.
But it's much more contained, I guess. There's tambourine. And we haven't heard like an actual drum kit yet, I don't think. Maybe on the first track. I guess I wasn't paying attention to the drums that way. Okay, well, we're going right through this. This is track 4, Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder.
I don't know. I know you're not a lyrics guy, but just even looking at the titles, you can kind of see it's a relationship album.
Sure.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were together? Or, you know,
Yeah.
That's Not Me.
there are words we both could
Yeah. So here's him doubling his track, but it's spread wide.
head on my shoulder. Come close, close your eyes.
Now, back in the day, and this is one of the things I was talking about with Pink Floyd, you wouldn't be able, or no, with, what was it we were listening to that was like really, maybe it was Metallica, but like, you wouldn't be able to, nowadays on a computer, you can just, gosh, we should pause maybe in between the songs. I'll say this
We'll
for-
wait to the end of it.
Yeah, we'll wait till after
Pause
this.
this one.
So organ in the middle, with bass guitar and other things, strings on the left, reverb for the strings on the right to make it feel bigger. That's cool. That was very common. I don't know if it's common at this time. Right, you get a little sense of the strings on the right side.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just because they put the reverb on the right side.
I see.
Close your eyes and be still. Don't talk, take my hand.
Or they just had a stereo reverb and then they panned the original source of the strings to the left, but you still get a little bit of the,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who would want to listen to the mono version of this.
I don't know.
Seems like stereo kind of makes it. It
it's
seems
much
like it's
more interesting
important
to
to
listen to. Yeah.
the mix.
Oh, yeah. And yours is stereo. I mean, it seems like they released the
Right,
stereo
yeah.
version right away, right?
Yeah, yeah, they did.
I'm assuming they just had to release a mono version because a lot of people didn't have stereo systems.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe certain countries. I don't know.
So there's that tom drum. We've heard that on 3 of the 4 songs so far, which is really nice. And so for each song, they would have had to tune the tom drums to the key of the song.
You could tune a tom drum?
Yes,
Drum?
the timpani drums. If I've been saying tom, I meant timpani.
Oh.
The timpani drums, the big orchestral drums.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, you tune those to the key of the song.
Oh,
A lot of the times in classical songs, you'll see the percussionists actually tuning the song to the next piece of the song.
Huh.
So they tune it in the middle of the song.
Wow.
Gosh, that is it infuriates me that the songs fade out because
Yeah.
it's like, why would you even bother with that?
Make sure to pause it after this.
Boo. Okay, yeah, I'll pause it there because we're going to miss the last 7 seconds of him fading out. Okay, so what I was going to say was, one of the things that I'm trying to keep in mind with this, and that I've learned in videos when we do older stuff, is that I take for granted a lot of things, techniques that we have now that are super easy, that they didn't have when this album was made.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm hearing here is, as Brian is like doubling himself, for example, when you say the word talk, right? Talk, if you could picture the waveform, talk starts immediately because the T sound has a very fast transient, which is means it attacks right away. Very fast attack.
Looks like a vertical wave.
Right. And the K, talk, is a very abrupt ending. So if two people say the word talk at the exact same time, but they're off just a little bit, you hear t.
Oh, interesting.
And you don't want that.
Yeah.
It's very distracting in music. And you hear it all the time. All the time. And to me,
with
that's...
a computer, you could just line those waveforms
Exactly.
up.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I have spent literally countless hours doing that exact thing because that's what I was good at when I would edit stuff and work on stuff.
Yeah.
Micro editing is the thing that I was really good at.
Yeah.
Sitting for hours and hours and just like looking at the waveforms of guitars and like moving things around so that everything lined up relatively perfectly. You don't want everything to be perfect, but again, I'm also a human being with a mouse, so like I'm not moving it perfectly.
Right.
You know, so it's never going to be perfect.
But you can zoom in infinitely.
You can zoom in infinitely, and you can literally line up. Literally line up waveforms
just by visually looking at it.
Right, and I do that.
Yeah.
I do that all the time when we have like one source that's recorded, and then when Chris records remotely, I'm recording him on Streamlabs, and then he's recording himself right on his own end. So he sends me his track, which is its waveform, and I can just line the waveforms up by zooming in infinitely and lining up the literally the waveforms. Even though they're a little different just because it's a different machine recording them, you know. So
back then they would have been on tape.
You've been on tape, and you wouldn't have taken the time that would have been necessary to line things up that weren't correct. So the best way to do it was to perform the piece correctly, in time correctly.
Yeah.
Now, this is not saying anything about pitch or anything like that. I'm literally just talking about timing. And there are some lead vocalists that are not good at this. To them, the idea of doing an overdub of their vocal take, which an overdub is when you sing a line and then you just sing the same line again, right? Now, a lot of the times what happens is when you're recording, you have the artist, like let's say you're working on verse 1, right? So you have the performer go in and they sing verse 1, and then you just have them do verse 1 again, and you just have them do verse 1 again. You do now this is when you have infinite amount of tracks and infinite amount of hard drive space, right?
And then it's all up to the editor
right. So then you do 6 takes, and then if it's like obvious, like, oh, usually the last one is probably the best one, but then as the editor, right, you go through and you can like pick and choose words from one and not, and you have to make sure that you're doing it in such a way that makes it sound natural and everything, but you can go from one track to the next. I would imagine it would be a similar situation back then without those extra things. So he probably had maybe like two or three tracks that he could do at most. And then what happens inevitably is people hear the tracks together and they're like, that sounds really good. Let's keep that.
Yeah.
Doubled. You know, which it's even back then that was a pretty common thing to have your lead vocals be doubled. So like we just heard Brian do that in the last song. Well, we heard him do it in I think track 2, but it was mono. Like both of his tracks were panned right to the middle, so your brain perceives them as basically one person, one take.
Okay.
Now that it's more important to have all the transients of the words he's saying line up that way because your brain is perceiving it as one vocal take.
Yeah.
It's just the lead vocals. Unless you're focusing on it, you don't even realize that it's Brian singing twice.
Yeah.
However, the track not the one we just heard, but track 3, he did that same thing, but they panned his vocals wide a little bit, probably 30% to the left, 30% to the right.
Okay.
And what then your brain perceives it as 2 different people.
Yeah.
You're listening to it and it's Brian's voice, so the frequencies in his voice will kind of muddle together, and there will be times where it sounds like one voice when he's literally perfect. Singing the perfect pitch at the perfect time and the perfect frequencies all line up, and your voice sounds like it can be in the middle.
Yeah.
But then you can also hear the different takes because the timing isn't perfect because he's a human being, and you can hear that it's 2 different takes, 2 different people. And so in order to do those types of things back then and have everything sound in time was much more of a difficult process.
Yeah, I imagine.
And so I want to make sure that I point that out because it can be lost on younger people today who have never had to experience that, me included. When I started, I was the last class I was actually the first class in my college that wasn't required to learn how to edit on tape.
Huh.
Every class before me had at least had to take like a semester of learning how to like just mess around with tape a little bit. And it was more like of a novelty thing.
Yeah, sure.
Because maybe you'd run across a tape or something and need to know how to like rewind it on the machine or whatever.
Right, yeah. Splice it. Sure.
Right. And so like, but I was the first class to go completely digital.
Yeah.
And so, which we did still use a lot of analog equipment, but we recorded everything digitally. Which is what the industry was at the time in 2005.
Yeah.
That's what the industry was in 1985 in some ways. And so this being 1966, you got to keep in mind that it's a special talent to be able to overdub your own performance and make it as perfect as you can.
Yeah.
Some people, it's supernatural. Like Chris Schoenberg, he can overdub himself and you can't even tell it's two people. It's always boggled my mind because he's doing like screaming metal vocals.
Yeah.
And you would think that something that's essentially just white noise, but with rhythm would be impossible to duplicate. But he does it. And it was something that from the very first album I recorded with him way back in like 2014 or 2013 or whatever, I was shocked that he could do that. Other people, they can't do it at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking of the lady who's one of my favorite singers of all time. Her name is Maria or Marja or something. She has a J in her name. But she's the lead singer of the band The Sounds. She refuses to even try to line up her transients on some of their earlier albums when they were younger, and it is unlistenable to me. I can't even listen to that album because of those the vocals. Everything else on the album is great, but when I listen to it, and there's just moments during the songs where I'm like, oh, this sounds terrible, and they didn't go in and fix it. They didn't know what they were doing. They were younger, even though it was a major label release, they could have fixed it, but they didn't want that. But they have like a punky aesthetic to them. Right, yeah. It's like the idea of micromanaging your performance would be very against the nature of certain types of music,
Sure.
And so there are like performers who, when they do an overdub, they're like, okay, new style. Like they don't even try to do the overdub the same. And that gives the feeling of the song. The song has like a gang vocal feel. Like it just feels like there's multiple people singing the whole time. And that just is a whole different kind of a vibe, a different kind of type of a thing. It's a specific choice for the performance and that performer. And so this, to me, what they're doing here is much more impressive because it is trying to match yourself.
Yeah.
And not only that, match the people that are around you. That's why barbershop quartets are so impressive.
Yeah.
When they're so in sync, right?
Right, yeah.
Because it is people totally in sync. And that's why those types of things are super impressive. And so them doing everything the way they've done it here with the way I've explained it and how difficult some of that can be is super, super impressive. Yeah. And so that totally makes sense to me. Yeah. So, all right, there's my first little diatribe. Okay, so now we're on to track 5, I believe, right?
Yep.
This is I'm Waiting for the Day in 3, 2, 1. Okay, starting off with that timpani that they love so much, the main instrument of this.
I came along when he broke your heart.
This all of this just makes me wish that there was no restrictions on how long songs could be, and like
back then.
Because why don't I want to hear a 7-minute long Beach Boys song?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing?
I know.
I mean, maybe they did later on.
I think Good Vibrations is a little longer, but probably 4 minutes or something.
We did learn a bit ago when we were looking stuff up that Good Vibrations came out after this album was released.
Same year. I think it was like he started writing it during these sessions, but yeah.
But when I could, I gave strength to you. I'm waiting.
Okay, so that's a nice little guitar in there. Just the other thing to mention about a lot of what we're hearing here is what's that like twangy? That like in the middle there's like a rattly thing.
Yeah, there's something rattling.
But again, that's like barbershop multiple layering choral thing that they do. Like the fact that they had a guy in the band that was the bass is badass.
Yeah.
Ba 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 red. Oh, what I was gonna say, there's a lot of subtle things happening here, which is at the time was probably not as common because what is that rattly thing in the middle? Well, it's gone now. Now it's back.
Yeah, it's something.
It's a guitar or something that's rattling.
Yeah.
It's only when they play that root tone.
It's like one of those things you spin around.
It sounds like that, but the fact that it doesn't do it constantly means it's an instrument that's rattling at a certain note.
Yeah.
And the only thing that would really rattle would be a guitar or bass. But the bass is, I assume, just going direct into the board. It sounds very nice and clean.
They can have an ending and then come back in and fade out.
Probably.
I think that's...
So this is back to the intro of the song.
Yeah.
I like that. I think those strings were mono with some stereo reverb on them. So you can hear organ going da 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 da, but I think there's also piano going ding 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 ding. It just tears my soul every time because it's like, man, what they could do so much more. But I guess you just got to appreciate what it is.
Right,
okay. Vibraphone.
Yeah.
Love that. The bass is so subtle. You know, nowadays bass is like the main thing you hear in all modern music.
Oh yeah.
And this is so subtle here. And the bass is not overly compressed. Like you hear the bass note going, rather than just But what I was gonna say was there's a subtlety to everything, but there's also like a tastiness too. Like when I say something is tasty, it's very well thought out and the part has relevance to what's happening, but not necessarily overpowering.
Okay.
Like little guitar lick that's just like a little like it doesn't have to be it's not a guitar shouting listen to me.
Yeah.
It's just like a very tasty, like well-placed textural type thing that when you do listen to it, you're like, that was clever.
Okay.
Because here we got brass section, some woodwinds. Is this just an instrumental?
I think it is.
I love it.
Yeah.
With castanets off to the side like a horse. Muted trumpet. It's so crazy to hear things like a brass section or a string section that was recorded like in mono. Because nowadays you would never ever do that.
Really?
And so this, I mean, it makes me think of like the Nancy Sinatra stuff I listen to or whatever, where it's just all the strings are on the left, the drums are on the right, and Nancy's in the middle.
Yeah.
So far, the MVP of this album is Timpani. That was a slide guitar, which is really interesting because obviously their association with surf music in Hawaii and stuff would totally make sense that they would want to have that in there. So that was kind of like the halfway. I don't know if that's the halfway point of the album. That's the middle.
Sloop John B. The next song is the final of the side.
Okay.
So that's a little intermission, I guess.
Yeah, I like it. We probably should have paused after that one. All right, now we're going to Sloop John B., which is an epic, amazing song about a ship.
I don't. Yeah.
Because they hoist them sails and stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
And a sloop is a type of boat.
Oh. Well, I'm gonna try and listen to lyrics then, because I don't really know where this fits into the story.
Nassau was the famous pirate port.
Oh. Huh.
So that is a celeste or a xylophone, not a vibraphone, which they were using on the track before this. See, there you can hear that it's a different person doing the vocals with him.
Okay.
It's a little bit more obvious. I have always loved this song. Always.
Really?
Yes.
I wouldn't have expected that.
I could sing the whole thing, but I will not. He even says this is the worst ship I've ever been on.
So I guess this guy has a breakup, and then goes out on a ship.
Could be. He joined the pirates, maybe.
He left and joined the pirates.
Yeah. Maybe he was an officer in the Navy or something, and not the Navy, in the British
Royal Navy.
See, now this just like it's just amazing, right? All the vocals.
Yeah. Oh, they're not British though.
Huh?
They're not British though.
That's all right.
No, but we just said.
Okay, there. Now Brian switched into his falsetto voice.
Yeah. I like this part.
Because it's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Is that the high voice? Is that with Brian?
Not necessarily. I'm not exactly sure.
I mean, I'm sure they have a guy that is their soprano or whatever.
They have multiple of them can do that.
Yo, sure.
So I don't.
He ate all of his corn.
It's just rude.
Oboe, again on the far left there. Or a baritone sax. And like the cool thing about this is like the song has this momentum to it, right? Like they're dum 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 dum, but the guitars are going dun 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 dun. Like they're not strumming.
Yeah.
It's this constant movement, which is, I'm sure, supposed to represent the ship moving or something, and the fact that they can't get off the ship, you know.
Right.
Okay, so that's the first half. Let's pause it, I guess.
Okay.
That is just an epic song. It would be amazing if it was twice as long with a guitar solo and all these amazing things in it.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, I know, I can't keep focusing on what I wish it was.
Right.
I know that's always my issue when we do these things. It's like, oh, I just wish it was
Yeah.
this. I wish it didn't have to fade out. I wish it didn't have to fit on a 45 record. I wish it didn't have to be on the radio for under 3 minutes.
And it's worth talking about the differences between old music and new music.
Well, and this was 3 years after Stairway to Heaven came
Sure.
out, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing.
So-
and especially because this is like, it's an album. It's not every song on here where they expect it to be a single. So
Yeah.
there's nothing stopping them from doing a longer song. I think it's just the Beach Boys. Like, I've never known them to have a long song, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's just kind of their thing.
But like obviously Brian could. Like I think he even
Sure.
wrote like orchestral pieces and things. Like he's
Yeah.
written like symphonies and things that are like,
Yeah. I don't know if this album was just
You
before that
know.
ever occurred to him or what. But
I think it was just the music business at the time. Because they were at this time they were one of the biggest bands on the planet, right?
they were big, yeah.
So they had to have had like the record label being like,
Yeah.
you know, like Charlie. Wah, wah,
I'm sure they're like, you got to be above the Beatles with this album.
that kind of stuff is awesome though. You
Yeah.
know, they really don't have that kind of thing anymore now because
Right,
everybody
it's-
just listens to whatever they want. But like, it's
to,
kind
be,
of
to be following new music in the late 60s, it must have been like just a mind-blowing time.
Yeah.
If something like this comes out and then it's Sgt. Pepper's comes out later the year or
I mean,
whatever.
that's why people revere this time so
Yeah.
much, right? I
It's
mean,
the
like
people that were there that remember it, and it's like,
yeah,
yes, that
and
was the
eventually
greatest
we'll have all those people die, and then we won't have to focus on it as much.
That's right. We can move on.
Move on, for God's sake. There is good music after 1980, for goodness sake. But anyway, we joke. But like yeah, you know, it's so interesting. Like as I listen to this, everything just sounds so contained to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything just feels so like it's in a tiny little box.
Yeah.
Because everything nowadays is just so enormous.
Yeah.
And I don't even just mean the volumes of things. I just mean like I was trying to think like, have I heard anything that was recorded in stereo yet? And I don't know if I have. You know, like which someone might listen to this and be like, what are you talking about? Everything's
stereo.
spread wide. It is stereo.
Yeah.
Well, it is definitely in stereo, but that doesn't mean necessarily that something was recorded with two microphones to get a true representation of the stereo image,
Yeah.
right? You can record multiple things. You know, I could pan your track to the left and my track to the right. And then if I went over here, you'd be able to tell that I was in the middle, right? And if I walked over there, you'd be able to tell that I walked further over there because that's how this works. And nowadays they have like binaural recordings and things like that where it's even more accurate, where you can, do you know what that is? Yeah.
Where they put like a fake head and
basically you just put something that's like the density and size of a head, and then you put the microphones where the ears are, and it creates this really very accurate. That's how they do a lot of surround sound stuff for video games and everything. Chris Parker would be able to tell us a lot more about that. But and nowadays everything is so compressed, and like the drums are the focal point of every song. Everything is just, Lord's songs are just a drum beat and then this low droning thing, and then her vocals over the top of it. That's what pop music is now. That's what we just listened to Melanie Martinez. That's what that is. That's what Olivia Rodrigo is. Well, Olivia Rodrigo is a little different, but like that's what modern pop music is. And so to have something like this, which you and I don't really listen to a lot of modern pop music stuff. We do. But not like
when I hear it.
Yes. But like if we were going to sit down and listen to something, I would listen to something that has lots of intricacy to it like this, but something that to my way of thinking would be recorded much better than this, only because of the advancement of technology in the last 60 years, right?
Not that they should have done this differently.
Yeah, no, they couldn't have really at the time. And so, but when I listen to this, part of me just is like, damn it.
Yeah.
Couldn't this have been recorded 60 years later now?
Yeah.
Like someone should recreate this now. And maybe they have, and because a lot of times they'll release like Beach Boys' greatest hits, and they'll be like, you have to go in and re-record everything.
Yeah.
Which usually they don't spend very much time and money on.
They're not going to
They're not going to get an orchestra on it.
Yeah.
They just play strings or whatever, whatever. But like, there are albums being made today like this where people do put in the effort to have strings come in and all this and whatnot. Like the Kaiser's Orchestra, I think is a great example of that's from 2013, but you understand my point.
Still,
like there are a James Bond theme song, right? Like they always put the extra effort into the James Bond theme songs. They bring the orchestra in. It always starts small and gets big, and that's like how it is. And like, those songs feel special. Christmas songs do that.
Yeah.
Where they're put a little extra effort into it and get the orchestra in on it. And I'm not even just saying the orchestra, but like to me, like the vibraphone, the xylophone, like all these different elements that a band probably wouldn't have with them on stage. I talk about this on this channel all the time. Like leave it all in the studio. Like this sounds like it would be almost impossible to perform this stuff live.
Yeah, I wonder, because I mentioned Brian Wilson does do like the Pet Sounds tour, but I think it's a little like he's kind of just sitting at a piano and singing, and it's a little toned down, but they do have a ton of backup singers.
And that's also the brilliance of this, right? Like that's how those songs were written, I assume.
Yeah.
He just sat on his piano or with the guitar.
Yeah, I'm sure they still sound good once you strip out
and played the songs. And then what you do is when you go in the studio, you just build them out. That's, I assume, what Beatles did with Sgt. Pepper. That's what Depeche Mode did with all their albums.
Yeah.
Depeche Mode famously, one of the things I love about them is that Martin will write a song on the piano, and they'll have the piano in the song, and he'll go in and they'll perform the vocals, and then they take the piano away, so there's like nothing, and then they just add weird noises to it. Like Depeche Mode has whole albums that are full of like no melody whatsoever other than the vocals. It's just bleeps and bloops and drum things. Anyway, whatever. We're not here to talk about Depeche Mode, but like it's so interesting how bands approach things like that, right? Like you said, Brian can perform any of these songs just sitting at the piano. Of course he can.
Yeah.
But when you listen to the things we've been listening to, like that song, like there was so much in there. Now, Sloop John B did sound a little bit more like a band performing. Like you could hear a guy sitting at the kit or whatever playing. But like a lot of the other stuff is just this like slow, like we've got an oboe over here and an orchestra over here, or the strings over here, and Brian singing in the middle, and then there's some overdubs and things like that. And so it's not necessarily very conventional in terms of like the instrumentation or anything like that at all.
Yeah.
It's very pretty sounding, and it's very lush. Everything sounds very like it's chill almost, which is nice. But at the same time, when I listen to it, like I said, everything just sounds so contained, like it's in this tiny little box. And I think that's totally just the time period.
Yeah.
It's just the time. Like it sounds like it was on a vinyl record from the time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like it sounds like it's just in this tiny little box.
Limited in a way.
Yeah. And so like a guy wonders what the masters sounded like in the studio, like with this, it'd be like just this incredible thing to be like, oh my God, like I can't even imagine what that would sound like. But I imagine to make these new stereo mixes, like they went back to those
Yeah,
things.
they probably
and they
did
chose,
as much as they could.
And I'm assuming what they did was they chose not to try to like enhance everything as much as humanly possible. You know, because nowadays you could go in with you could nowadays you could load
Artificially.
you could load the guitar track and then
Yeah.
load it into an AI and say clean this up.
Right, yeah.
And it spits out this perfect sounding that's still the same performance.
Right, yeah.
Spits out this perfect sounding whatever.
Yeah.
And then you do that for every individual track, and then you have this pristine sounding thing. And I imagine that in the future that's what we're going to be getting with some of this stuff.
Yeah, probably.
Like we may be getting like a super high resolution Beatles thing that's AI enhanced.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that the future of music is AI enhanced remasters.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can even nowadays, you can go online and find Cartman singing any song that ever was because people just
crazy,
use AI to do that.
Yeah.
But like, imagine when you start implementing it in a way that would be legal because the artists themselves are doing it,
and beneficial to the
overall
like
quality.
and subtle.
Yeah, like imagine hearing Led Zeppelin's album if it actually sounded good or even halfway decent. You know what I mean?
Right.
Imagine hearing Stairway to Heaven when it sounded good.
Okay.
Go back and watch our Led Zeppelin
Go
video.
leave your hate comments on that video,
Yeah.
not this one.
Not this one, because we're enjoying this a
We're
lot.
actually like this.
So, okay, all right, well, let's move on. This is God Only Knows. I'm very familiar with this one as well. This is just classic Beach Boys.
And this open side too.
This open side 2. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. So Sloop John B was a little bit more of energetic.
Yeah.
But most of everything has been not very energetic at all.
Yeah.
So,
Well, half of them have been like depressing songs,
for sure.
you know?
I guess I haven't been paying attention to the lyrics. You
Yeah,
keep
I
pointing
know.
stuff out, which
That's
is
okay.
fine. I'm just so interested in the instrumentation.
Yeah.
So here's piano.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, you could sit at a piano and perform this. So here, this song, a very rare song that has sleigh bells in it. That's not a Christmas song.
Yeah.
I mean, you can count the number of songs with sleigh bell in it that's not a Christmas song on one hand. You know, it's true though.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you should ever leave me, will life would still go on?
So now we have sleigh bell and a tambourine.
The world could show nothing to me.
No drums yet.
So what
The bass is very percussive though. You really hear the boom, 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 boom.
God only knows what
And there's a type of bass called a Peabody bass guitar that the Beatles used in almost everything.
Oh.
And that's why they get that like plucky sound.
Oh.
And if you
Interesting.
play it with a pick, it's very plucky. That's what this is. They're doing with the bass here. It almost sounds like a guitar.
That's Paul McCartney's Hofner bass?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Feel free to correct me on anything I'm saying that's wrong. I don't know very much about the Beatles at all. I just know all the Beatles music I've heard, the bass sounds plucky like this. Maybe
Yeah.
that's because at the time, all the Beatles I know is when they were probably 20 years old and didn't know what they were doing.
the world could show nothing to me.
Whoa.
What is that?
Some sort of an organ. Very cool. I've never noticed that before.
Yeah, me neither.
I think that was an organ. Just with some crazy reverb on it. We're back to that clippy cloppy sound.
Yeah.
But those are not, that's not castanets.
Okay. Coconuts?
Coconuts.
I don't know. Kind of sounds like a
It
clip
does
clop
sound
of
like
a
that.
horse.
Some kind of a wood blocks
Yeah.
type thing. There's a lot of interesting percussive stuff happening here. It's almost contradictory to the rest of the song, like the beautiful lushness of the vocals.
Yeah.
And then have the da-da-da-da-da in there, you know? And then just those gorgeous doo-doo things on the left. As again, I think that was woodwinds or brass, which has such a different sound than strings. It's so nice to have them be using the woodwinds
Yeah.
and the brass. It's very regal sounding, which is okay.
What is it? We've heard that sound a bunch.
It's either an oboe or like a baritone oboe
Yeah.
or a baritone. It's not an oboe. It's lower than an oboe. It's a baritone clarinet or something. It's awesome.
Isolate their heads and stay in their
Okay, so here you can hear Brian double tracking his vocals, but they're spread wide again, so it sounds
Okay.
like two people.
Now what can you tell?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
you listen for it.
Now
you can hear 'em.
now the chorus vocals are in the middle.
Yep.
Mono. That's cool.
They come on like they're peaceful, but inside they're so uptight.
Very cool. That was like a whole octave he went there with his voice, which obviously he can sing that, but to start up here and then go all the way down here.
Yeah.
Not very common.
Now how can I come up and tell them the way that they live could be better?
Listen to that piano moving too. Timpani. This is the longest song on the album. 3:18.
Yeah, buckle up.
Oh no, it's not. There's a 3:21 later. I just wasn't
yeah.
made for these times.
Whoa.
So that sounds almost like a baritone harmonica
Okay, yeah.
or a lower register tenor harmonica or something.
Now how can I come
That was very cool.
and tell them the way
It sounds similar to that other oboe or whatever it
Yes,
was.
very
It's
similar.
got that vibraty sound.
Yes.
or like something's rattling.
Yeah. Chris Parker actually bought one of those, a
Oh, yeah?
baritone harmonica.
Cool.
It's this giant harmonica. Yeah. He's used it for some sound effects for the game he was working on.
Oh, nice.
There's a lot in this that reminds me of, there's a band I really like called Tommy James and the Shondells.
Yeah,
Which, yeah, they have a lot of famous hits.
they're cool.
But like they did a lot of experimental stuff too.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that's reminding me of this a little bit, only because I'm familiar with them a little bit more than this.
Yeah.
And so when I hear something, I'm like, oh, that sounds like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's a little similar
Even though this
to,
probably did it first.
like Phil Spector at the time was doing similar stuff
Oh,
with,
okay.
with the girl groups and stuff with the wall of sound. More so like overlaying things on top of other things, but
Yeah.
that was pretty innovative too.
That was a neat song. I liked a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's hard to discern like where choruses are and stuff almost. It's
Yeah.
less like there's actual choruses so much as there's just like different parts of songs. Like it does feel classical
Yeah.
almost in that way.
right away you're thinking about romance.
Low brass again. They love that. It's awesome.
Especially on
That's
this
like
side of the
that's like
album.
a
we
tuba.
didn't hear that much on the first side.
Oh, we did a little bit.
Did we? Okay.
So the vocals here are really dry, which is very different. Less reverb.
It makes your days go wrong. It makes your nights so long.
Oh, that's an upright bass. Going football. Ding, ding. Football. Ding, ding. That's very cool. There's definitely elements of them being like, we're going to do this just because we can.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what Paul McCartney and
It's good when a band gets so big that's like they'll let them do stuff like that
Yeah.
and spend a lot of money.
yes, and I'm sure that's the kind of stuff that the Beatles heard and were like,
Yeah.
okay,
If we're the Beatles, how are we gonna let
We need to
this
step this
American
up.
band
Yeah.
outproduce us?
yeah.
But I keep on remembering things like they were. She made me feel so bad. She made my heart feel sad. She made my days go wrong and made my nights so long. You got to keep in mind, love is here today and it's gone. Tomorrow is here and gone so fast.
17, right?
What?
Or dun, 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 dun,
Oh yeah.
right? It's the Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah.
Ooh, just like the way we...
Edge of 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, this kind of stuff is cool to me. Give me a 7-minute song where they can noodle around with stuff like this and just be like, you over there, over there. And just have Brian Wilson up there going, play something, do this.
Well, just think about it.
And they are doing that in a 3-minute song.
Think about it as a 38-minute album where they're doing that.
And that's a good point.
You know?
Yeah, except every 3 minutes it fades out.
Yeah. I think everyone has faded out, hasn't it?
It's just how it was. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, we were looking at the Beatles songs yesterday, just on Wikipedia, and there was a lot of longer ones there.
Yeah.
So they were making long songs when these guys were refusing to do so.
I think so, yeah.
So, kudos to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't just mean Hey Jude.
I don't know how they put out. I don't know how they fit Hey Jude on a 45.
Yeah. So this is actually the longest one.
I've been trying hard to find the people that I won't leave behind.
That piano is so jangly sounding.
They say I got brains, but they
So here everything sounds very far away, but not his vocals.
I wish they
And that bass is off to the far left, which is kind of weird.
time things start to happen again. I think I got something good going for myself, but what goes wrong? Sometimes I feel very sad.
Sometimes he feels sad.
Oh gosh, we have 3 different vocal parts going here. That's really cool. Flute.
I guess I just wasn't made for these times.
My posture this video has been terrible. I've been like this, like a hunched over old grandma. I try to remind myself. Ever since we switched to these chairs.
Lower your chair next time.
Nah.
Nah.
I just need to move forward and move my chair back like this. Then I've got better posture. We don't know what we look like here. Well, that's really appealing looking. Have my fat stomach be closer to the camera so it looks even bigger.
See, now I look like a giant compared to you. He's shrinking. Your treatments.
Well, my hands look enormous compared to look, my hand is so big compared to my head.
Time things start to happen again. I think I got something
Looks like we're drinking like neon waste.
what goes wrong. Sometimes I feel very sad.
Not my favorite song on this album.
I like the fact that there's like a 3-part vocal melody.
Yeah.
Oh, 4-part. So, here that clearly that's the chorus, and then both times they went right into the flute thing, which is kind of nice.
Just wasn't made for these times.
It's that pop, pop, pop song. It's weird.
I didn't notice that.
It's like a voice doing a theremin sound.
But that's actually a theremin, though.
Is
isn't
it actually a theremin?
It sounded like it.
Sounded like it. Well,
When was a theremin invented?
they definitely had theremin at this time, probably in the
That's
studio.
probably what that was then.
Because they used theremin on the next song, Good Vibrations.
Well, there you go. Oh, yeah. That bass part on the left. Ding, 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 ding. That's such a different bass part. I love it.
Yeah.
It's not really even a bass part, but I love it.
So this is Pet Sounds, and I don't remember how the song goes, but maybe that's what has the animal sounds on it.
Okay. A lot of stuff going on. They got the kabasa, I think is what that thing is called.
Yeah.
A kielbasa, maybe?
Kielbasa?
Kielbasa could be. No, that's a food, isn't it?
That's sausage. I don't know what a kielbasa is.
Because that guitar sounds really cool.
Yeah. This, I think, is another instrumental.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny if there were no animal sounds on the whole album? You're like, what was Cody talking about?
I don't know what I was thinking about. So yeah, they do a instrumental as the penultimate song on each side.
Yeah, that's
for
cool.
whatever reason.
That's cool.
And then they end with a single,
which I've never heard.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if Caroline knows a single. Wasn't it listed on the?
It was listed as like the B-side.
Oh, maybe it's the B-side to Sloop John B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. Gotta bring the timpani back. Bass sounds really good. So the brass are a little bit cleaner sounding. There's less reverb on them. There's a little bit of room tone to them, like reverb to them, but not like the percussion or anything that's off to the sides.
Yeah.
It's just so different to have the brass be used like this throughout the album. It's really cool. I mean, it calls to mind the music they listened to growing up, which is big band music, you know?
Sure.
So it makes sense that they would think of that, but nowadays you would just use strings for that. You wouldn't really put a brass in there, so that's really cool. Okay, so this is Caroline No.
Yes.
They like their reverby percussion.
So now he's reuniting with the girl, I think.
But she cut her hair and it's different.
I guess.
Oh, cool. There's a baritone bass guitar again, back again. Unless it's bass again. And there's a slapback delay on it. Ba-dum, ba-dum. That could just be the bass. Saxophone.
Could I ever find in you again the things that made me love you so much then?
It's weird because there is a bass on the left side too. That was a little weird timed. God, the woodwinds and the brass just give it such a different feeling.
Yeah.
That really makes it special. Boo.
One last fade out to end the...
Well, hold on. They've got a lot of time left. What are they going to do? Are they going to do something?
Oh, I don't know. Oh.
Oh, but yeah, there were no animal sounds.
Yeah, what the hell? Oh, there it is.
You knew what you were
There's
talking
a pet
about.
sound right at the end. Okay. And he's getting on a train to go home or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or he's going to get hit by the train.
He's jumping in front of a train. It's, Brian Wilson was a disturbed individual.
Snake! Snake! Now the dogs eat his carcass. The true meaning of pet sounds.
Yeah, we figured it out.
Okay, so that's it. So you did...
Like they got to the end of the album, they're like, we forgot the pet sounds.
Forgot the pet sounds. Okay, so that that last song, I liked that a lot. It just felt like half a song.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those songs felt like too short of a song to me because of the way they faded out.
Maybe you'll feel differently with the Beatles then.
Yeah, maybe. I'm curious. I'm really curious to see it because for whatever reason in my head, I'm thinking of Sgt. Pepper's as being like a more goofy album. Like like more like goofy.
It is.
Whereas this was not goofy really at all.
No, it was.
It's very serious. And
it was sad and serious.
And yeah. Which I will say, that last song, really interesting the way he mentioned it and was starting off with her cutting her hair, because I had a girl that was a really good friend of mine that I used to work with, and we worked at the Hastings together, and she helped me, like we recorded like a music video together and stuff, and she was like, we were doing music stuff together and whatnot, and she was married at the time, and her husband was in the military, and so she joined the military to get assigned to be with him. Yeah. And she went through all this training, got denied, had to go through extra training, got into the military, got into the thing that he was doing, and he said, "No, I don't want to be with you." And so they got divorced.
Oh no.
And he came home because he got dishonorably discharged or something because of something. He got so heavy or something that he got discharged. So then the next time I saw her, she had cut her hair and she was a completely different person. Like she had like cut her hair super short. Yeah. And she was a completely different person after that. Like, which is a terrible experience. Yeah. You know, and then to have like, okay, well, the rest of my life is going to be as a military person to be with my husband.
For the wrong reasons.
And then just like totally screw the whole thing over.
That's quite the story.
So that I really related to those first like few lines of that song. Yeah. Just never the same after that. But I overall, I would definitely say I liked that. Yeah. You know, if you skip to the end here to just hear our overall thoughts of the album, definitely worth it to go back through and hear some of my thoughts, I think, because I talked a lot about the brass and how that gave the album its overall feel. Timpani was the star of the album. It was in like the most songs of any instrument.
Yeah, it was almost every track.
Yeah, so that was really cool. I think that the fact that it fades, every song fades out at like a certain point and just fades out is just like atrocious and like really to the detriment of the songwriting. Yeah. You know, I know I got to just get over it because that's how the songs are. But like, man, I'll never get over it.
They could have at least done a transition between two or something like that.
Whatever. They could have done anything. They could have just literally, I don't care. All you have to do is go and it's done. You got all the reverb there, let it hang out. So, like, I hate that they did that. It's just a sign of the times. But that's one of the reasons I don't go back and listen to albums from this time. Like, you know.
You did good, though, not whining about it.
Yeah, for sure. So, but I just got to mention it here. You know, like, it's very disappointing to me that they did that. And if you're new to the channel, like, my phrase is no fade outs ever. Like, fading a song out is lazy songwriting every time. There's literally no excuse to ever fade a song out. Yeah. With the only exception being the physical media of the time and the limitations. But as we already said, Stairway to Heaven came out years before this. Yeah. So
was there any consideration for radio guys that's like, oh, if we do a fade out, that gives them a chance to be like, oh, the song's ending, I can start up the next one.
Yeah, possibly.
If that came from the singles of the time as like, oh, we got to fade them out.
You know,
I don't know. I've never heard that, but it's just
that's a good thought. I think that the radio DJs themselves would have the ability to fade the song out.
Yeah, that's true.
You just turn the fader down, and
you'd have to
turn the other one up.
That's true.
Which I think that's part of the art of what being a radio DJ was at the time.
Sure.
But you're right. I mean, the fact that it did start to fade out means you got to be on the ball for the next one. Yeah. You know, and not every song can fade into the following song. You know, so not everything goes together like that. Sure. So I don't know. I would say
in any case, that's just what they did back then.
I think that the way everything was recorded was really nice. I mentioned that everything did feel like it was kind of contained in this little box. Yeah. And I think again that was also just the limitations of the time. Mm-hmm. You know, if the remasters and remixes of this or whatever that are out there were able to go back to the original masters and redo them, you know, we mentioned that maybe they didn't overdo it because it still does sound like something from 1960s, 1966 or whatever. Yeah. So definitely this is a faithful representation of what it was. You know, if this is a master or something, I'm not even sure. Mm-hmm. A remaster. And so, yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was nice. I like the sort of more downtrodden-y feel of it, which is very interesting because most of the Beach Boys songs are so happy-go.
Yeah, I think that was probably different for people at the time too.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like,
especially
oh,
if
what
they
is
were
this?
expecting just more Surfin' USA or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know how many albums, like, did they have an album before this that was a
I
little
think
bit
this
more
was
like
a pretty
this,
big
or-
departure.
Big departure.
Yeah.
So that's cool. This is probably the music that Brian was wanting to make, I would
Yeah, I
assume.
think so.
After making so many albums of like surf music and stuff, like it makes sense that a band would want to do something different, and this is like as different from that as possible.
Yep, definitely.
But the inclusion of all the different instruments in every song is like really cool. Like the only way for them to be able to perform this live would be to have like a little orchestra off to the side that had a little brass section, a string section, like a chamber string section, and then like a vibraphone, a celeste, like some sort of xylophone type thing, like some different auxiliary percussion things. And then you have to have like a whole percussion section too, because there was lots of congo, bongo, castanets, tambourine, sleigh bells on God only knows. Like there was a lot of auxiliary percussion, which I always say on my channel here is like one of the most underappreciated aspects of all music is auxiliary percussion. The other thing is background vocals, which these guys obviously utilize to like the fullest extent imaginable.
Yeah.
But they have literally 4 guys in the band whose job is literally only to do backing vocals.
Right.
So that's the barbershop quartet of it or whatever. So all the background vocals were great. I said, I think none of it was recorded in stereo. I think it was all recorded in mono and then just placed in the stereo mix.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff had just like reverb on it that was a stereo reverb. And then you pan the source to the left and then you still hear little bits of it on the right because it's just a stereo reverb.
Sure.
That was very common at the time to have like a spring reverb cabinet, which is like an actual physical thing that was like a spring. Very cool.
Yeah.
And something that you could just record the output of, so you don't have to, you have a dry source. And
Sure. Yeah.
So that was very common at the time for studios to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Part of me thinks that it's impressive because of what it is, in the fact that there are so many different elements to every song.
Yeah.
Rather than it being like the same thing every song or the same elements in every song. But that to me is that, and I guess the songwriting is impressive as well, from like it being a bit more serious.
And having the whole album concept albums were not a huge thing at the time. That's telling a story throughout the whole album.
Right. So having it be a little bit more of like a through line.
Right.
I guess those things are impressive. However, the fact that the songs are all so short and they do fade out the way they do kind of, to me, limits my like ability to be impressed by it, because it's just so much, like only so much you can do in 3 minutes.
Sure.
However, they do pack those 3 minutes full of everything you can imagine.
That's true.
And there were moments where I was like, oh, that little guitar part was really nice, where what I was referencing was something that only happened once in the song.
Yeah.
Right? So like they're doing all this stuff and I hear this little guitar part off to the side, and that's the only time that happened in the song. That tells me that they were really trying to leave it all in the studio, as I say. They were really trying to have no limitations and to do whatever they wanted to do, to make sure that, like, if they felt the song needed something there, they just put it there, rather than thinking about how they were going to perform it live or whatever.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that aspect of it a lot, because I talk about that on my channel a lot.
And I think that was a new way of thinking at the time.
Yeah.
It's, there's the impressive like technical aspects of this, is how did they record this and do the reverbs and all this stuff. But then it's like, there was just a lot of things that had not been thought of.
Right.
And you just needed to think of them. It's not that they didn't have the technology. They could have put castanets in the song.
Right.
And they could have just played all this stuff, but Brian Wilson thought of this and is like, we're going to do something different.
Right. And I think that is probably the overarching thing that makes it so special, and why it's like revered nowadays as being an important album.
I think so.
Because listening to it, like I will say sonically, like it wasn't super impressive to me. But again, you have to take into consideration the time.
Right.
So maybe at the time it was impressive.
It's hard to judge that. Yeah.
But like I said, also, like, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band was coming out with albums that I think are probably sonically a little bit better sounding than this at the time. However, they didn't do all of their albums were just them around a microphone performing with their instruments.
Right.
Whereas this was like all sorts of guest musicians coming in to perform with, I assume they had sheet music and like all this complexity, layers of complexity to it that wouldn't have existed in something like that.
It's not like Led Zeppelin where there was no excuse.
There was no excuse that album sounded as bad as it did. It clearly sounded as bad as it did because they did it themselves and thought they could do it, and then they realized after the fact that they couldn't. So, But yeah, so I don't know. I liked it. I was impressed with it. I think in a lot of ways, I wouldn't say I was underwhelmed at all, because I was expecting it to sound probably even worse than it did.
Yeah. Oh, good.
However, like I said, it didn't sound like when I listen to something like this, it's like watching a movie that's in black and white and just thinking like, oh, I can picture it in color.
Right.
You know, and there is a lot to be said about the beautiful, like you can have gorgeous movies in black and white, and like stylistically it can be such a cool thing. But you can also look at a black and white movie and think to yourself, I can imagine the color that's here.
Sure.
And so like for me, I can imagine how this could have sounded if it was done nowadays.
Or even 15 years later.
Or exactly.
Yeah.
Even 5 years later, maybe
Sure.
even. And so like on one hand, I guess slight disappointment there, only because that's just how my brain works. It's hard for me to turn that off and be like, oh, I wish this,
Right.
I wish this. But at the same time, like it was still super impressive to have, you know, a brass section over here, a string section over there, all this aux percussion, tambourine over here. Everything was balanced very nicely. So clearly the stereo image had what they were thinking about that when they were recording, probably.
Yeah.
You know, what are we going to balance with what else? And there were moments where they were balancing the more complicated like brass parts, which again were spread out there across the whole album, really done really well, brass and woodwinds. They were balancing those with harmony gang vocals and stuff off to the other side, and it just makes sense for those things to be balancing one another because they're so similar tonally.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
so it just totally makes sense to me why they chose to do all the things that they did in terms of the stereo image and in terms of the arrangements of the song. So I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
All right, well, thank you for watching this. Let us know if you would love us to do more Beach Boys stuff. I don't know if we will or not. Hopefully we're able to use the audio from the album in this video, like I said multiple times. If not, thank you for bearing with us. And let us know if you want us to do more. In that case, we will see you next time.